Greetings all and welcome to Dave's Craft Room, and on today's video I'm very excited to embark on a new journey. We are going to make a stunningly gorgeous Redwork Embroidery quilt. I have here muslin, red embroidery floss, and an embroidery hoop. And what is Redwork? In the olden days, like the okie smoky time, thread and stuff was just like becoming available in colors. Red was the first color that they had available, or like the first dye for the thread. And so people would get their muslin and they would embroider fancy designs on it and then often make a quilt. I realized you could copy children's coloring book pages, and I found the perfect ones. On Etsy, you can buy PDF download of coloring book pages, and I found this one by Denart Designs, which I'm gonna link below. Zombies. Okay guys, Zombroidery. I put them in this binder. I'm using this binder for the first time. I've used a binder before, but for making a quilt and stuff and keeping everything organized, I've never used a binder before. I'm kind of excited. I've unlocked a new level of organizational skills by using a binder. I've done two already. Here I have one completed one where I put stars in it. This is one I've started, but I haven't quite finished yet. I just need to do the hands and the rest of the ground. And by the way, I can see on here, I don't know if you can see on camera, that I use two different brands of red thread here. It's definitely clockable. Guys, I have a bunch of red embroidery floss in my craft supplies stash. And it is from different sources. It's from different brands and all that. It's not all the same red. I'm going to use it anyway. And I'm going to try to use all the same brand on the same one, but if I run out, I'm not going to cry about it. I'm really not going to be too particular because I just feel like I'm not going to buy more. You know what I mean? And even if you can clock it, big deal. It's not that big a deal. You know what I mean? They may end up in the same block. It'll be okay. When you do Redwork embroidery, actually when you do embroidery in general, you should make every stitch even. I am going to try to make them even. You know, I want to do a good job, and I like to take pride in my work, and I just feel like having those even stitches shows that you care about this. And of course, I am just doing this for fun, so I'm not gonna be a perfectionist at the expense of having fun doing it. Yes, it's for fun, but if you're not gonna do a good job, what is the point? You know what I mean? You should have to at least try to do a good job. Now, many people will stabilize it first. They'll use this, I have some right here. They'll iron on, this is iron-on interfacing. I may have even cut this to see if I was gonna do that as an experiment. I decided against doing the stabilizer. Stabilizer is more expensive. I use it in t-shirt quilts. I use it in a lot of quilts, but it's mainly used for t-shirt quilts. It's more expensive. I can't buy it in any store around me. I can only buy it online. I think it's gonna be better for me to just go ahead and use muslin. It's gonna be drapier in the end. So that's what I'm gonna do. I'm not gonna stabilize it. In the end, I'll cut them all down to a uniform size. Sew them all up, and then I'm gonna hand quilt it. So I'm gonna cut my muslin out so that I can have it ready, put it in, and we're gonna just be doing all this. So Redwork embroidery was popular starting around the 1850s. The red thread was developed in Turkey, and it was the first thread that was color fast, meaning the color would not bleed. Prior to that, the color of the thread would bleed, so that's why Redwork embroidery came about, and the patterns used to be sold for a penny. Nowadays, you can do this technique with any color thread, but red is still popular because it has a traditional look. I used transfer paper for some of the zombies, and then I also used my iPad as a backlight to trace the zombies through. I don't know why I didn't think of this, but I have an iPad. I could have just displayed the zombie image on the iPad instead of printing it. But I had already printed them when I thought of that, so I just traced them from the paper. I decided to do a zombie redwork quilt because I wanted to commemorate the time I spent roaming the wastelands of Eurasia during the zombie apocalypse that hit in 2016. Each of these zombies represents one that I encountered on my journey after the world ended. I remember way back to the early days when the zombies started coming up out of their graves. This is what the world looked like. I spent the first few months traveling to zoos and opening all the cages to free the animals. I made this block in a rice field. I made this one in a shelter. I made this one on Devil's Path. In February, I was abducted by aliens. I'd been doing well keeping track of the date up until that point, but when the aliens dropped me back off, I had no idea how long I'd been gone for. I stopped keeping track of the date after that. They also wiped my memories. I know I made this block on their UFO, but I have no memory of it. On the morning after the night before of the February 74th and 75th, I saw 2 airplanes, one fixed wing and one helicopter. I had no idea where they came from, and it's been 200 years since, and I still haven't found out. One of my key considerations with the red work is trying to avoid having the red shadow through to the front. The way to avoid that is to make the back look exactly like the front as much as possible. No traveling, and no strings hanging around randomly. I followed that rule for the most part, but I probably did break it as well. But in the end, when the quilt was finished, I didn't see any red shadowing through. During the apocalypse, I traveled across China all the way to the East Coast. A lot of people thought the apocalypse started in China, but that's not correct. It actually started in France. After weeks of traveling and surviving on dry instant noodles, I finally found a chicken on the day I made this block. I also saw a pterodactyl, but I decided not to eat it. I heard the meat is gamey. The assignment I gave myself for this quilt was to do it in the exact style of traditional redwork embroidery from the olden days. Usually they were put together with just muslin and then hand quilted. So I decided to hand quilt mine as well. When I was making the quilt, I was taking a graduate class online where I needed to appear in front of the Zoom camera, and I surely did make blocks and hand quilt the project while class was in session outside the view of the webcam, and nobody in my class ever clocked it. So back to the apocalypse, I was able to sail to Japan where I met a group of survivors living on a cargo ship, and they let me join their group. We didn't speak the same language, so we invented a new one called Apocalingo. The grammar is really complicated. We floated on that cargo ship all the way to Guam, thinking that the apocalypse might not have hit Guam, but it absolutely did hit the island. There were zombies everywhere. I found 3 inside a cave. We stayed there for a couple of months eating canned goods, and then we floated away. We survived a lot of typhoons that season, so we called our little group the Foon Dogs. I decided to leave them once we made it to North America. I do better on my own. No! That was meant to be 10 inches! I'm just gonna sew it right back on. You won't even tell. All right, we're ready for an update. I have all 30 of the Zombroidery blocks complete, and we're ready to assemble it in a quilt. So I'm gonna do muslin sashing. I need to do a little bit of math to figure out what size of sashing, but I'll figure that out. Then we'll get it on the design wall. You know what? I've never really worked with muslin that much. It's just kind of perpetually wrinkly. Even after I iron it, the wrinkles stay in. I think when I wash it, the wrinkles will go away. I think it'll kind of soften up. I hope. But if not, it's the zombie apocalypse, guys. The world's over. Okay? The muslin's allowed to be wrinkly. So, and then we're going to hand quilt it. So, let me do some math. Whether someone survived when the zombie outbreak hit mostly came down to luck and what happened to them. I was in a top secret compound in an undisclosed location when it hit.
We held up inside of there for a few months, and by the time we ventured out, the worst of the apocalypse was over. Most people turned during those first few months, and the hordes of zombies were kind of dispersing. The zombie is different from other enemies that humans have fought before. Usually an enemy will just kill you, but a zombie converts you to their side. As our side shrinks, the other side grows. But they're kind of too stupid to do anything with those numbers. They can't organize or work together at all. It's ironic because it was only under those same conditions that the zombie outbreak could have occurred in the first place. Since we're talking about zombies, I will tell you that the absolute best zombie TV show is not Walking Dead, it's actually Z Nation. Walking Dead takes itself too seriously, whereas Z Nation is all about going on a wild and ridiculous journey. There are zombie babies, Amish zombies, plant zombies, bedazzled and rhinestone zombies, nuclear blast zombies, psychic zombies, polar ice-capped zombies. Now, I have seen my channel's analytics, so I don't suspect that most of my audience is interested in zombie TV, but just in case anyone who ends up here is looking for a zombie TV show recommendation, it's Z Nation. It's not Walking Dead, although I have seen every episode of Walking Dead as well. I marked the quilting lines with a washable blue pen. It was easy because I could use the blocks as a guide for making the diamond grid. And I used a fusible cotton batting. I did not use any kind of frame or hoop for quilting this. I just did it the way it is, and you can do that as long as the layers are basted together very, very well. So I had a fusible cotton batting, and then I spray basted the other side. I did take extra care to make sure I went under the red embroidery stitches with my quilting stitches. I definitely did not want any quilting stitches to be exposed going over the red work, and I was very, very strict about that.
My thread broke.
Oh my.
No miter. See that? I'm not doing a miter. This is how I'm finishing them.
The biggest danger in the apocalypse is not the zombies, it's actually the boredom. There's really not that much to do once the world has ended, especially because there's enough non-perishables around that I can survive for the rest of my life on that. For the boredom, I have quilting. I don't need that much supplies and it keeps me sane. I think it's 2023 now, but it's going to be 2024 in a couple decades.
I don't like the way it sounds. It sounds crunchy. Alright, so the quilt is fully bound and I'm finally ready to wash this quilt and get rid of all these horrible blue lines. I did have a little... Oh, the camera's not focusing. When I cut this piece, I accidentally slashed through it there, so I just needle turn applique a little patch there and quilted over it. So yeah, I tried to make the stitches even and perfect. Did I succeed? Probably not, but I did my best, and it is the apocalypse after all. So I'm gonna wash it now, and hopefully we will not see these horrible, well, I know that we won't see these blue lines because it's a washable fabric pen, but cool, so I'll come back when that's done.
So this is the final result. Using the cotton batting, and the hand quilting made it turn out so crinkly. I absolutely love it. I love to do this kind of silly project. And this quilt serves as a reminder to me that I survived the zombie apocalypse. Thank you for coming to Dave's Craft Room. If you enjoyed my story and my quilt, please like and subscribe to my channel, and please come again.